melanoma. And this particular subject often gets everybody's heart racing a little bit. People start to sweat a little bit. But I can reassure you, I get the same feelings with this particular tumor. So why are amelanotic melanomas important? So this was an interesting study published in 2014. It looked at the percentage of people surviving after a diagnosis of melanoma. They broke them up into pigmented and amelanotic types. And you can see the blue curve is much lower than the black curve. The blue curve corresponds to amelanotic melanoma. So people tend to do poorly after a diagnosis of amelanotic melanoma. Why is that the case? If you look at the median Breslow thickness at diagnosis, most amelanotic melanomas are identified at a much thicker stage than pigmented melanomas, 1.6 millimeters to 0.68 millimeters. So how common are amelanotic melanomas? In my experience, they're uncommon but not rare. It depends a little bit about how you define the tumor, and there is no accepted definition of what an amelanotic melanoma is. It could be a clinical definition, a dermatoscopic definition, or a histopathologic definition. But probably about 2 to 8% of melanomas fall into this category. What I'm going to focus on today is really a strict definition, meaning there's absolutely no pigmentation in the tumor. That's what I would describe as amelanotic. So why are they found more delayed, or what are the problems? Well, probably they present to physicians at a later stage. Patients ignore them. Patients believe that most melanomas are black and that pink lesions aren't necessarily as concerning. There's some evidence that they may have a more aggressive growth, and they are associated with a higher mitotic index than pigmented melanomas. I also think that they're overlooked by physicians. They're missed at earlier stages, and there's multiple reasons. They resemble inflammatory dermatoses. They can resemble basal cell and squamous cell carcinoma, and they may be treated as another diagnosis with cryotherapy or some other form of treatment, making it more challenging to detect these tumors. This is an interesting paper that looked at what did clinicians think amelanotic melanomas were based on clinical examination. This is a single institution study that doesn't really use dermoscopy, so this is really based on clinical appearance. They were only able to suspect that 1/3 of the amelanotic melanomas may be melanomas, and compare that to 94% of the pigmented melanomas. But what were the diagnoses that they considered in this series? Well, basal cell carcinoma was number one. They also described dermatofibroma, squamous cell carcinoma, pyogenic granuloma, dermatitis, keratoacanthoma, insect bite, hemangioma, benignitis, so they can have quite variable presentations. Now today what I'm not going to be focusing on are very advanced amelanotic melanomas, like this example. This is not a case where you need dermoscopy to sort of figure out that you really need to do a biopsy. Right? Another example of an advanced amelanotic melanoma, very thick. What we're going to focus on today are early amelanotic melanomas that generally have a clinical appearance like this. So subtle, where you may use dermoscopy to help you either identify this as a lesion that needs a biopsy, or increase your confidence about what the suspected diagnosis is, which may change how you proceed in terms of biopsying the lesion. The first study that really examined the dermoscopic characteristics of amelanotic melanoma was way back in 2001. It was a series of only 9 lesions. So very early they didn't have a lot of lesions. But what they did describe is that all the lesions had red dots on a pink background. And that was the takeaway message. So a dotted vascular pattern, dots, pink background, that's it. It's important to recognize this was done with non-polarized dermoscopy at the time. More recently, there's a paper by Dr. Jaimes of 20 amelanotic melanomas. All of these lesions manifested a polymorphous vascular pattern, as she described earlier today. So in addition to the dotted vessels, they also saw serpentine or linear irregular vessels. So here's a schematic. You see dotted vessels, linear irregular vessels. These lesions tended to be symmetric. They tended to be oval or round in shape. So clinically, they were very innocuous looking, but the dermoscopic appearance was quite distinctive. And all 20 manifested that pattern. The best study to date came from the International Dermatoscopy Society, but one of the limitations of this particular study is that they included hypomelanotic melanoma, and we'll see why that's a limitation in terms of their main findings. They did have a very large sample size of lesions in their study, and it was very well designed. The main message from this is that they propose a simple dermoscopic model for the identification of amelanotic melanoma. They describe a negative feature, so if you see milia-like cysts, you can quite reassuringly say this is not melanoma. And then they describe any positive feature, but most of these positive features are relevant to pigmented melanoma. So irregularly sized brown dots or globules, multiple blue-gray dots, irregularly shaped depigmentation, blue-white veil. These are all characteristics that you see in melanomas with pigmentation, so not true amelanotic melanomas. What was specific for amelanotic melanomas? Greater than one shade of pink. In my experience, I haven't found that to be particularly useful. Predominantly central vessels, maybe, but what I find most powerful is the presence of the dotted and linear irregular vascular pattern that we've heard about several times today. So, the best way to learn this is to look at a few cases. So we'll start with the easy ones. These are the ones that have some pigmentation to help you, so not true amelanotic melanomas. So an outlier lesion, this is large, asymmetric. What do we see with dermoscopy? The first thing you see are the atypical dots and globules, so you're already concerned this is melanoma. But it's important to look at the amelanotic portion to learn what the features are. So we'll look at these two areas. You see these serpentine vessels, you see dotted vessels. So polymorphous vascular pattern, invasive melanoma 1.2 millimeters. So this is already, this is more advanced than we want to detect these lesions. A little bit more subtle, but still there's some suggestion that this is melanoma. Clinically, you see an irregular focus of pigmentation. You see a little bit of network here. This is not symmetric for two axes. The dermoscopic characteristics, mostly a dotted vascular pattern, right? So you just see many dots. That's the clue for invasive melanoma, 0.42 millimeters. So now we start with really just pure amelanotic. This is a more advanced lesion. So clinically, your eye catches this large pink lesion. This is the dermoscopic appearance. We'll highlight these two areas. We can see multiple dotted vessels. You see linear irregular vessels. So we'll go back, and you can see the same pattern throughout the entire lesion. Anytime you see that, you're thinking melanoma. This is 0.5 millimeters. This is a more subtle case, courtesy of Dr. Margoum, that we saw earlier today. So subtle pink lesion. There's many little pink lesions here. So you may be thinking this is an inflammatory dermatosis, maybe seborrheic dermatitis, Grover's disease. This particular lesion, maybe it's actinic keratosis, squamous cell carcinoma, it could be many different things. Let's take a look at the dermoscopy. So it's very specific. Dotted vessels, thin serpentine vessels. We'll highlight that there. Invasive melanoma, 0.6 millimeters. Lesion on the back, clinically quite subtle in appearance. Dermoscopy, again, the same pattern. Dotted vessels, linear irregular vessels. I'll highlight that again, 0.75 millimeters. Lesion on the back of the arm, quite broad, with a central area that's a little bit darker. So the central vessels may play out. This is an example where it holds true. So you see the whole lesion here, but the central part gives you the most information. Dotted vessels, linear irregular vessels, 0.55 millimeters. Lesion on the leg, clinically very subtle. This could be many different things, but for me, I would probably have predicted squamous cell carcinoma just based on this appearance. Dermoscopy, it's slightly different. You don't really see the polymorphous vascular pattern. It's really just dotted vessels. So many dotted vessels, but there's some variability in the size and the shape. They're not all quite the same exact appearance. The clinically, right, there's even a little bit of scale. So scale, sometimes you see in these amelanotic melanomas, not as pronounced as in squamous cell carcinoma. All right. So are all amelanotic melanomas, do they all lack pigment from